You keep telling yourself you need the perfect opener, some clever line sharp enough to lock in her interest before she has a chance to lose it. That belief is the very thing working against you. The harder you try to impress, the more tension you create, and tension suffocates attraction. She isn't grading you on creativity in the first half minute. She's sensing your emotional steadiness, your awareness, your ability to stand in uncertainty without unraveling. And here's what most men miss entirely. The interaction starts before any words are spoken. It begins in the way you hold eye contact, in the pace of your steps as you approach, in whether you cling or calmly disengage when the moment calls for it. Master those silent signals, and starting conversations stops feeling like a risky bet and starts feeling intentional. Let me ask you something honestly. Why do you get shy? Not the polished answer, not the version that sounds reasonable. Why does a man who handles responsibilities, pays bills, solves real problems, suddenly feel like a self-conscious teenager when he sees a woman he's drawn to? It's not because she's some intimidating force, it's not because women operate on secret codes, and it's definitely not because you're incapable of forming sentences. Awkwardness around someone you like usually isn't about them at all. It's about old insecurities that never fully dissolved. Maybe you were compared to other boys when you were younger. Maybe someone mocked you once, and the memory still lingers beneath your confidence. Maybe you built a strong career, but neglected social courage. So now you feel exposed in a space where status doesn't protect you. When you notice her, your mind doesn't register possibility. It registers threat. Then overthinking arrives disguised as strategy. What if she thinks I'm strange? What if she's out of my league? What if I say something stupid? Overanalyzing feels smart. It feels cautious. But most of the time, it's just fear dressed up as logic. I've seen accomplished men, leaders, negotiators, men who command rooms, become visibly tense around someone they genuinely like. They can close major deals without hesitation, yet freeze when attraction is involved. Why? Because business rejection feels transactional. Romantic rejection feels personal. It touches identity. And here's the uncomfortable truth. You're not afraid of her. You're afraid of what her response might say about you. You're afraid she'll validate a quiet doubt you've carried for years, that maybe you don't measure up. But listen carefully. The discomfort you feel when approaching someone you're attracted to isn't proof of inadequacy. It's evidence that the moment matters to you. Caring without emotional control, though, becomes paralysis. Before worrying about lines or techniques, you have to regulate the dialogue happening inside your own head. If you walk toward her already questioning your value, that energy shows up instantly. Confidence doesn't begin with speech, it begins with interpretation. When you stop viewing attraction as a test of your worth, everything shifts. Now let's confront the fear directly. What's the worst realistic outcome? You walk up, you say hello. She responds, I'm not interested. Then what? Does your career collapse? Do your friends vanish? Does your body shut down? Of course not. Yet your brain doesn't respond rationally. Research from neuroscientist Naomi Eisenberger at University of California, Los Angeles, demonstrated that social rejection activates the same brain regions associated with physical pain, particularly the anterior cingulate cortex. In simple terms, your mind processes exclusion similarly to injury. That reaction is powerful, but activation isn't the same as actual danger. Thousands of years ago, being cast out from your tribe threatened survival. Today, being turned down means you return to your seat and continue your evening. Your nervous system, however, hasn't fully updated. It still flares up as if you're facing exile. So you avoid approaching altogether. And every time you avoid it, you quietly reinforce a belief. I couldn't handle that. See the trap? Avoidance doesn't preserve confidence. It shrinks it. Confidence isn't constructed in comfort. It's built through exposure. Rejection is simply information. It means she isn't interested. It does not mean you lack value. But when you internalize it, you convert a neutral response into a wound to your identity. There's an even deeper cost. Each time you hesitate and walk away without trying, you create a story inside yourself. Other men act. I retreat. That narrative does far more damage than a polite no ever could. Attraction isn't destroyed by rejection, it's destroyed by neediness. And constant avoidance breeds neediness because you start to believe chances are scarce. They aren't scarce. Your willingness to take action is. Rejection is brief, regret lingers. So when you ask yourself what could really happen, the honest answer is this. She declines, and your life continues exactly as before. Except now, you know you had the courage to step forward. A refusal cannot erase your worth, but delaying action can slowly erode your self-respect. Let's ground this in reality. Women are not mystical beings sent to evaluate your adequacy. They're human. They have doubts. They replay conversations in their minds. They worry about being judged too. When you approach from a place of calm curiosity instead of performance, the energy shifts. You're not there to prove yourself. You're there to explore whether there's mutual interest. So how do you actually begin? Simple. Drop the performance. Make an observation about the environment. Comment on something genuine. Ask a light question rooted in the present moment, not because it's a magic formula, but because it shows awareness. The content matters less than the composure behind it. Speak clearly. Maintain relaxed eye contact. If she engages, continue. If she doesn't, smile and exit gracefully. That ability to walk away calmly is magnetic because it signals abundance, not desperation. Understand this, the goal of starting a conversation isn't to secure validation. It's to express interest without attachment to outcome. When you detach your identity from her response, you free yourself. And paradoxically, that freedom makes you more attractive. The conversation begins long before words, and it continues long after them. It lives in your posture, your pacing, your emotional regulation. When you control those, you no longer approach hoping to be chosen. You approach choosing to show up. And that shift from seeking approval to offering presence is where real confidence is born. And that shift from seeking approval to offering presence is where real confidence is born. Because the moment you stop chasing validation, you start seeing reality more clearly. She's not standing there as some flawless judge waiting to approve or deny your worth. She's human. She replays conversations in her mind. She wonders if her laugh sounded strange. She questions whether she came across as interesting, attractive, engaging enough. You see composure on the outside and assume certainty underneath. That's your projection, not her truth. Many women actually appreciate being approached when it's done with awareness and respect. What frustrates them isn't that men initiate, it's that men either charge in carelessly or never gather the courage at all. There's rarely a balanced middle, and that balance is where you want to live. The second you place her on a pedestal, you distort the interaction before it even begins. You start narrating your own defeat. She's out of my league. She probably has better options. She wouldn't go for someone like me. The instant you elevate her above humanity, you lower yourself beneath it. Attraction doesn't grow in worship. It grows in equality. When you treat her like a trophy to win instead of a person to meet, your energy shifts. You become overly careful, too agreeable, hyper-focused on not making mistakes. And that subtle tension leaks through everything, your tone, your posture, your timing. Confidence isn't dominance, it isn't arrogance, it's neutrality. She's a person, you're a person. Two adults deciding if there's something worth exploring. When you truly internalize that, your body reflects it. Your shoulders settle, your eye contact steadies, your speech slows down. And here's the hard truth. The moment you decide she operates on a higher level than you remove yourself from consideration. Not because she rejected you, but because you disqualified yourself internally. But humanizing her doesn't mean walking up blindly. It means moving with intelligence. And that awareness starts before you ever take a step. Most men think the interaction begins when they speak. It doesn't. It begins the moment you notice her. Pause. Observe. Who is she with? Is she fully engaged in conversation with friends? Is she focused on her laptop with headphones, signaling privacy? Is she casually scanning the room? Does her posture look relaxed or closed off? Context changes everything. A woman sitting alone scrolling through her phone could be open to connection, or she could be decompressing after a long day, guarding her space. If you approach without reading that difference, it doesn't communicate boldness. It communicates social blindness, and social awareness is one of the clearest silent markers of high value. Picture this clearly. One man spots her, feels immediate attraction, and strides over mid-sentence while she's talking to a friend. He inserts himself into the circle, forcing energy into a space that wasn't open. Another man notices her too, but he observes first. He waits for a natural pause. He catches the subtle shift. Her shoulders relax, her gaze drifts around the room, her body language opens slightly. Which man feels safer? Which man feels calibrated? Women constantly assess emotional and social safety, not from paranoia, but from instinct. Research in social psychology consistently shows that people form impressions within seconds, based largely on nonverbal cues and situational awareness. Before you ever introduce yourself, she's already evaluating how you move. Does this man understand the environment he's stepping into? If the answer is yes, you've earned quiet points without saying a word. If the answer is no, you're climbing uphill before the first sentence leaves your mouth. Understand this deeply. She forms an impression before you speak, not just about how you look, but how you carry yourself. Real confidence is measured. It knows when to step forward and when to hold position. And one of the clearest invitations to move isn't a smile, it's eye contact. Before language, there is permission, and permission is often communicated through the eyes. Eye contact isn't random. It's one of the most primitive social signals we have. If your eyes meet once, that could mean nothing. Twice, with a slight hold, suggests awareness. 3 times without discomfort begins to signal curiosity. In 1989, researchers Kellerman, Lewis, and Lead conducted an experiment where strangers maintained prolonged eye contact. Many participants later reported increased feelings of attraction and connection, even though none existed beforehand. Why? Because sustained eye contact activates vulnerability. It communicates openness. It quietly tests safety. When she looks at you and doesn't immediately turn away in discomfort, her nervous system is running a silent evaluation. Is this safe? Is this interesting? Is this worth exploring? The moment is subtle, almost invisible, and most men miss it because they either stare too intensely, turning curiosity into pressure, or they look away too quickly, signaling insecurity. Mutual gaze is a green light, not a promise, not a guarantee, just a possibility. It doesn't mean she's imagining a future with you. It simply means the door isn't closed. But if she consistently avoids eye contact, angles her body away, or keeps her focus locked elsewhere, respect that. Confidence doesn't force interaction. Confidence recognizes invitation. If she hasn't acknowledged you visually, don't demand attention verbally. Let that sink in. If she hasn't seen you, don't make her hear you. When you align your approach with awareness instead of impulse, you stop interrupting spaces and start entering them naturally. And when your presence feels natural rather than intrusive, the conversation doesn't feel like an invasion. It feels like timing. And timing, more than any clever line, is what makes the beginning effortless. Because attraction develops best in spaces where both people are willingly engaged. When the eye contact is steady, unforced, and mutual, that's your signal. Not to rush, not to perform, just to step forward naturally. You're not walking on stage. You're closing distance between two human beings, and once you're standing in front of her, this is where most men quietly undo all the work they've done internally. Instead of staying grounded, they flip into performance mode. Suddenly, it's about delivering something unforgettable, the perfect opener, the line that guarantees success. Let's reset that immediately. You are not auditioning for approval. You are introducing yourself. The first few moments are not about dazzling her. They're about setting the emotional tone. Keep it simple. Hey, I noticed you and wanted to come say hi. Or, I didn't want to leave without introducing myself. Calm, direct, no theatrics. Directness communicates comfort with your intention. Over-explaining communicates discomfort with your presence. Watch how energy shifts between two approaches. One man stumbles in with disclaimers. I don't usually do this. My friend told me to come over. He's apologizing before he's even begun. Another man says, Hey, I saw you from across the room and wanted to introduce myself. Short, steady, no rush in his voice. Which one feels centered? Stability is attractive because it feels safe. Women are highly perceptive when it comes to subtle cues. Your tone, your breathing, your pacing, the way you hold your shoulders, these details speak louder than any sentence you prepare. Studies in interpersonal communication consistently show that confidence is interpreted more through delivery than vocabulary. Vocal steadiness, relaxed posture, measured eye contact, those elements carry weight. You don't need a rehearsed script, you need presence. And presence comes from accepting that this is simply an interaction between two adults feeling out a moment. You are not there to win her over in seconds. You are there to open a door. If she responds warmly, continue. If her replies are brief and her body language tightens, respect that and exit smoothly. Internalize this. You don't have to be impressive. You have to be at ease. Ease lowers defenses. Trying too hard raises them. Pressure suffocates attraction faster than silence ever could. So keep it clean, keep it honest, keep it human. And once the doors open, your next focus isn't intensity, it's atmosphere. Shift the emotional state gently, not with heavy questions about life philosophy, not with an interrogation about her 5-year plan, with lightness, playfulness, a touch of humor. This doesn't mean turning into a comedian, it means allowing the moment to breathe. In 2015, researcher Jeffrey Hall at the University of Kansas conducted studies examining humor and romantic interest. The findings were clear. Shared laughter, not one person performing, but both people genuinely laughing together, strongly predicted mutual attraction. Not clever punchlines, not rehearsed jokes, shared laughter. Why does that matter? Because laughter signals safety. When she laughs with you, tension drops. Her body relaxes. The interaction shifts from silent evaluation to shared enjoyment. That's the transition you're aiming for, and it can be situational. If you're at a networking event, you might say, "Be honest, you came for the snacks too, right?" If you're at the gym, "I promise I'm not interrupting a personal record attempt." Light, contextual, effortless. The goal isn't to prove you're witty, it's to create a small shared experience. When she smiles and leans in slightly, that's not accidental, that's engagement. But humor must soften the moment, not sharpen it. Avoid sarcasm that cuts. Avoid self-deprecation that lowers your own standing, and avoid forcing jokes that feel rehearsed. If it feels strained, she'll sense it instantly. Here's the deeper truth. If she feels good in your presence, you've already accomplished the most important thing. Early attraction isn't built on deep compatibility or life alignment. It's built on emotional experience. If the interaction feels light and easy, she'll associate that feeling with you. But this is the point where many men sabotage themselves. The conversation flows. She's smiling. The vibe is strong. And instead of closing confidently, they overstay. They stretch the moment past its peak. They keep talking just to avoid a natural pause. They cling because they're afraid momentum will vanish. Understand something critical. Scarcity creates value. Overexposure creates fatigue. If the energy feels good, that's often your cue to step away. Not to drain every ounce from it. You don't need to monopolize her time to prove interest. In fact, the ability to disengage calmly is one of the clearest signals of internal security. You might say, "I'm glad I came over to say hi. I need to get back to my friends, but I'd like to continue this another time." Clean, composed, no desperation in your tone. And here's an even stronger move. Offer your number instead of immediately asking for hers. That subtle shift changes the dynamic entirely. You're not chasing access. You're extending an invitation. You're giving her the choice. If she reaches out, great. If she doesn't, nothing about your value changes, because your worth was never dependent on a single interaction in the first place. And here's the final truth you need to absorb. Starting a conversation isn't about tactics. It's about emotional control. It's about walking into a moment without needing it to validate you. When you approach from that place, aware, steady, unattached, you stop trying to secure an outcome and start creating experiences. That's what makes someone memorable. Not a perfect line, not flawless execution, but the feeling of calm certainty in your presence. When you master that, you're no longer hoping for permission. You're simply participating. And that participation, grounded and intentional, is what transforms a simple hello into the beginning of something real. Because your strength was never in making her stay, it's in knowing you can leave. A man who can step away calmly, respectfully, without bitterness in his posture or tone, communicates abundance without ever announcing it. That's attractive, not as a tactic, but as a reflection of emotional steadiness. And steadiness is rare. When you internalize that, conversations stop feeling like exams you have to pass. They start feeling like options you get to explore. This whole process was never about memorizing clever lines or mastering psychological tricks. It's deeper than that. It's discipline on three levels woven together. First, you manage your inner dialogue. You stop treating attraction like a threat to your identity. You recognize that anxiety is just an outdated alarm system, not a prediction of humiliation. Second, you pay attention. You read the environment. You respect timing. You understand that eye contact is an invitation to possibility, not a guaranteed outcome. You move when the space opens, not when your nerves demand relief. Third, you act with simplicity and exit with intention. You speak clearly. You introduce lightness. And when the interaction peaks, you disengage with composure instead of lingering for validation. Conversation isn't manipulation. It's emotional control expressed outward. Remember this, women aren't drawn to flawless phrasing. They're drawn to the man who can stand comfortably in uncertainty. That's presence. That's strength. That's value. You don't need better lines, you need stronger nerve. And nerve is built one step at a time by choosing to act.